Hi guys, I've got some excellent news for you today. The legal battle between Stardock Games and Frontier Games seems to be finally over, which is absolutely brilliant. And they seem to be working towards something, a settlement, which will be great for everyone who loves both Stardock Games and Fred and Paul. And oh my god, I'm really, really happy that it's finally come to an end. Anyway, one of the things which always interested me about the legal battle is that the focus was mainly on the hyperspace mode of the game and how that was similar to the modes in Star Control Origins in terms of the way that they did hyperspace. So I decided to look a little bit closer at the resources side of the game. So let's have a little look at that, shall we? In the Urquan Masters, the planet lander lands to collect minerals from the surface of the planet you're orbiting. In Star Control Origins, the planet lander lands to collect minerals from the surface of the planet you're orbiting. Both landers collect resources by running over them, then take off in a hurry with a press of the escape key. These resources can be sold for resource units, the game's credit system. Now, when it comes to the legal side of things, when we look at how hyperspace was represented originally in Star Control 2, or the Urquan Masters as it's been called for quite a few years now, we have a red hyperspace with sort of holes that you can move through, and that will put you into star systems. You've got aliens that come out of nowhere, aliens that come and help you. You've got all of these different similarities. You've got comets rushing across the screen, and the screen is tinted red. And this is the this was the sort of idea, the aesthetic choice of Fred and Paul when they were designing Star Control 2 or the Urquan Masters, and Origins sort of took a lot of that on board. But in this video I'm going to look more closely into the way that resource units are handled, and more at the resources which are within the game itself. Now, before you come to me and chastise me and say, well, there's only a certain amount of elements in the known universe and they're grouped into very, very specific categories, please take into account that resource units are traded units for items that you pick up. They could be elements, they could be anything. They could be, wild berries and fruits. They could be alien idols. They could even be the Argyle souks or socks, as they were in Project Nomad, for example. There are a huge number of different things that people could pick up on planetary surfaces and sell for resources. So to basically narrow it all down specifically to a point where they are primarily elements, that was also an artistic choice of the original game designers. So by having things done in this specific way, it does create a certain amount of friction when it comes to saying, well, things could have been very, very different, because you could be going down, you could even be picking up livestock in the same sort of way, like for example driving around the planet and picking up like herds of sheep, whatever, scooping them up with the tractor beam or something like that. So there are a number of different ways that they could have done resource units in terms of picking stuff up off of planets, and they could have possibly made the universe seem even more abundant with it. You could even have got different forms of bacteria, things like that. So it's not always a situation wherein you can just sit back and say, well, there's only a certain amount of elements in the universe, because there's a lot more things that can be traded for resources than just elements. Now, what follows is a list of the common resources that are found in both Star Control Origins and Star Control 2, or the Urquan Masters. These in Origins, in the new version of the game, they've been broken down into common gases and common elements, whereas they're just regarded as common resources in the original Star Control 2. Anyway, let's have a little look at them.
Common elements and gases found in both games: hydrogen, lithium, carbon, nitrogen, silicon, phosphorus, arsenic, selenium, ozone, free radicals, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, ammonia, methane, formic acid, formaldehyde, cyanoacetylene, methanol, ethanol, titanium oxide, zirconium oxide, water, silicon compounds, iron compounds, nitrous oxide, hydrocarbons, carbon compounds, calcium compounds.
Now, one of the things I really liked about Star Control Origins is the fact that they reclassified a lot of the resources, at least in the corrosive section, because you've got your sulfuric, your phosphoric, hydrochloric acid, hydrocyanic acid. All of these things have been reclassified as corrosives now, which I think is a really positive step forward. Anyway, here's a little look at a couple of the corrosives which the games had in common.
Corrosives found in both games: oxygen, fluorine, sulfur, chlorine, bromine, iodine.
One of the things that Stardock did right when they worked on Star Control Origins was they upgraded helium and elevated it to being one of the noble gases. There are 6 normal noble gases. I believe that there is a man-made noble gas called oganesson, but I don't know whether or not it's fully established that's a noble gas. But anyway, that having it actually fit in with the noble gases, I think, was a really, really good move. So good job there, and we'll have a little look at the noble gases which the game shared in common.
Noble gases found in both games: neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon.
Now, one of the things which I find a little bit weird is when you look at the base metals for Star Control Origins and you look at the base metals for the Urkwon Masters, a lot of them contain noble metals as well, and they could have been split into two different groups. Like you got your common gases, you got your noble gases, you could have for your base metals, and you could have noble metals as well, and they could have had slightly different resource values. Now, the fact that both of the games follow the exact same logic path when it comes to the metals, I think it's a little bit too close to for comfort, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's have a little look at the base metals which both games shared in common.
Base metals found in both games: antimony, barium, beryllium, bismuth, boron, cadmium, cesium, calcium, chromium, copper, gallium, germanium, hafnium, indium, iron, lead, magnesium, manganese, mercury, molybdenum, nickel, niobium, osmium, potassium, rhenium, ruthenium, scandium, sodium, strontium, tellurium, thallium, tin, titanium, tungsten, vanadium, yttrium, zinc, zirconium.
Now, exotics for both games are kind of interesting and both of them make sense, although I think that the inclusion of Joe crystals for Star Control Origins is a little bit suspect. But with that aside, another thing which is slightly suspect is the fact that they write superfluids with a space, because superfluids in its most common form is found as superfluids being just one word, so it's not superfluids, it's actually superfluids. So they technically could have dropped the ball on that one.
Exotics found in both games: antimatter, degenerate matter, glue balls, magnetic monopoles, neutronium, superfluids, show crystals.
When it comes to precious metals, indium's technically a precious metal, so leaving it as a base metal in Origins is probably a little bit of a problem, because they could have elevated it to a precious metal and expanded the amount of precious metals that you can pick up, which I think would have been a positive choice.
Precious resources found in both games: palladium, iridium, silver, gold, platinum.
Now, when it comes to radioactives, I feel that the radioactive elements could have been expanded on massively in Star Control Origins, because the fact of the matter is, whilst a lot of radioactive elements, like Lawrencium, for example, they are synthetic and they are built by people. I mean, technically, you've got a big universe out there, and there's probably a large amount of aliens using a large amount of weird radioactive substances to nuke each other. So the fact of the matter is, you could technically have the leeway to invent a lot of different radioactive materials, but one of the good things is that they actually elevated radioactives to actually being a radioactive material, which I thought was a really good thing, and that's a positive change which Star Control Origins made. But I really think that they could have expanded on the list of radioactives and maybe changed a couple of them around, possibly.
Radioactives found in both games: actinium, astatine, francium, neptunium, plutonium, polonium, protactinium, radium, technetium, thorium, uranium.
When it comes to rare earths, let's take a little look at praseodymium. Praseodymium does not have a dash in it. However, in both of the games, it does have a dash in it, and this is actually a relatively common thing, because it happens for quite a few other materials in the game. So you've got space in the superfluids, you've got weird dashes occurring within specific words, and it feels to me like the elements lists and ideas have been copied across from Star Control 2 or the Urkwon Masters to Origins. Also, you've got to take into account as well that the colour coding for everything, it's all the same between both games, and I think that it is very, very it's very revealing when it comes to what I think is they've taken the exact same resource system and moved it across. The resources have different values now, but the fact of the matter is they've got the same categories, they've got the same colour codes for the categories, which I think was possibly a mistake. But it does fall into the whole idea of the artistic side of things. Like, for example, the tinting, the shifting of hyperspace red. So, for example, the noble gases, they could have been They could have been like purple, or the corrosives could have been orange. Radioactives could have been red or green. Rare earths didn't have to be that color. They could have been a brown color, or they could have been grey. There are many different things. Anyway, let's have a little look at the rare earths, shall we?
Rare earths found in both games: cerium, dysprosium, erbium, gadolinium, holmium, anthanium, ruthenium, neodymium, praseodymium, promethium, samarium, terbium, thulium, ytterbium.
So let's summarise. With the fact that you pilot your ship to a planet, you send down a lander, you run over the resources on the planet, and pick up stuff in your lander, and I didn't even go into detail about the wildlife, did I? There's actually a large amount of abundant wildlife in the game, and one of the interesting things about the wildlife within Origins is it will potentially try and kill you as well, but let's not even look at that. The wildlife can be killed, and the meat from the wildlife, or it can be captured in Origins as well, but the meat from the wildlife is then sold on to a species called the male near. Now, this is a very, very interesting idea, because the Melnir are strange yellow aliens which inhabit the big star systems, and they're there and they will trade with you, and they're information gatherers, which is quite interesting. And they're very, very similar to the yellow information brokers that you get in the Urquhart Masters, the Melnorme. In fact, I see them as being pretty much the same thing, because the Melnir will give you they'll give you strange things that you can't get anywhere else, new tools and equipment to make you stronger, and you will get the exact same thing from the Melnorme in the Urquhart Masters. Another interesting thing is that when we look at the Melnorme, there is a potentiality that they were the Melnum, which is very, very male near to the name Melnir. Is a very, very similar name, very, very similar thing, and the fact that both the aliens are yellow is a little bit ominous, because they are so very, very similar. Anyway, there's a lot of things about about the games that are very, very similar, and I can see a massive amount of problems coming from the legal thing escalating any further. Anyway, I hope that this has been fun for you. I'm so happy that they're getting things resolved, and it really makes my day finding that out. I'll probably, if this video is popular for any reason, I'll probably make a couple more videos on the similarities and the potential ramifications of that, maybe, who knows. But I'm just so glad that they're getting on now, which is absolutely brilliant. I've got fingers crossed for Ghosts of the Precursors. It's going to be amazing, I just know it. And yeah, I'd love to work on that game, I swear to God. And on top of that, I just love the fact that things are going to expand for the Star Controls Origins game. I think that's brilliant. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Have a lovely day, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.